Let's face it, creating your first storyline project can be stressful. I always thought of myself as a tech-savvy person, but the first day I was using Storyline, it probably took me 5 hours to create 5 somewhat interactive slides. Part of that was because I was watching so many tutorials, and despite learning so much from those tutorials, there's a few things that I really wish someone had told me before I started my first project that would have saved me so much time. So that's what I'll be sharing in this video. So my first tip for you today is to change the aspect ratio of your slides in Storyline before you begin creating your project. So my first project, I used a 4:3 aspect ratio, which to me looked a little bit dated. But by the time I realized I could change it, it was too late. This is something you have to do before you begin creating. So in order to do this, you're going to go to Design and then Slide Size. You'll notice the 4:3 default here. We're going to change that to Custom. And then as far as pixels, if we increase the pixels, that's going to give us a lot more leeway later. So we're going to make this 1920. We have to unlock the aspect ratio. Let's do 1920 by 1080. That'll give us a nice 16:9 aspect ratio. Scale existing content shouldn't matter. We can also set this as default size if you want, and click OK. Another useful thing that Storyline allows you to do is to save theme colors. So if you've studied a little bit of visual design, you know how important it is to work with just 2 or 3 main colors throughout your project. And what you can do is actually go here to the Design tab in Storyline and then click on Colors. And you can see there's sort of some built-in ones. You can see past color schemes that I've used for projects. Or if you go to the bottom, click on Create New Theme Colors. Then whatever accent colors you've chosen, for example, using something like Adobe Color, you can go in. I would use these accent ones. So you have accent 1, 2, and 3, and then copy that hex code from wherever you've found your color, and that's actually going to add it to your theme color list. So for example, for this button, I've got a green color, and I want to make sure that it's a theme color. When I go to Format, Shape Fill, I can see that my colors are here, the ones that I've already chosen, which just makes it a little bit faster to find the colors that you want. Those of you who have been using PowerPoint for years will probably laugh at me for having discovered this one, but if you're not using it, Format Painter is amazing. So basically what Format Painter does is it copies and pastes formatting. So to give you an example, I have this yellow box here. It's got this fill color, it has a shadow on it. And rather than having to change all the features of this box, I just want to copy the formatting over. So I'm going to click the original box on the Home tab. I'm going to click Format Painter, click the new box, and voila, it's that easy. So to remind myself to use this one, I actually wrote Format Painter on a sticky note and stuck it next to my computer just to remind myself to take advantage of this tool. Tip number 4 is once you make a button or a shape, set it as your default. So for example, if I want to add a button here, we'll make this a continue button. So what's shown up here is actually just the default button formatting. And of course, you're going to want to change that to fit your colors of your project, to fit the theme. So let's say I want it to fill with red here, but I don't want to do that every single time I create a button. So what I can do is actually right click, go down, and you'll find Set as Default Button. Then you'll notice next time I insert a button of this shape, it's going to actually copy that same formatting. Something you'll be doing a lot of in Storyline is moving objects around, so it's nice to have some shortcuts for that. So you'll notice here, not all of my icons are lined up. You're definitely going to want to learn how to do alignment. So for example, if I click on this object and go to Format, you could watch a whole video learning how to align these objects together. But what I want to show you is actually how to move a single object. So the fastest way is Control and an arrow key. You can see I can move this guy right over. but it's still a little bit off. Control arrow key's not giving me enough precision. So what I'll do is go back to the Format tab and actually use the pixels to move him around. So you can see moving the X pixel moves horizontally, moving the Y, we can go up and down the Y axis, and that gives a ton of precision, which is really useful. And notice as well, you can change the width and the height of an object. So for example, if I wanted to make this object twice as big, I could put in 500. Notice that the aspect ratio here is locked. So if I wanted to stretch this image, I would right click, go to size and position, and then I could unlock the aspect ratio to give me a bit more freedom. Tip number 6, something that doesn't seem like a big deal when you're starting out, but becomes very important later, is naming things. So you want to name everything possible. You definitely want to name your slides. So here on the left in Story View, you can click on a slide, right click, rename, just make sure it has a title that makes sense that you can refer to later. And then when you're working on individual slides, you want to go to Timeline View and make sure that every object on your slide actually has a name. So you can see I started doing this. I've got main menu, home box, download, etc. But then I get into icon 1. What is that exactly? Picture 18, picture 17, right? I have no idea what these things are. And later when I add triggers and variables, it's going to get very confusing. So what I'm going to do is click picture 18. Storyline highlights it for me. I can see that it's this icon here. Double click and rename. Let's just call this meditating guy. And I can do the same. Picture 17 is light bulbs, and so on. So experienced ideas, you can disagree with me on this one if you want. Feel free to do so in the comments below. But I would actually advise against using master slides when you're just starting out, as they can be a little bit confusing. However, once you make something like the foundational slide for a scenario, you're going to end up copying that a million times. So you want to make sure that that initial slide is really well done. So don't get discouraged if it takes you hours just to make that one foundational slide. So you can see here I've got kind of a master slide for my scenario. And I've got kind of a visual setup that I like. I'm ready to copy this. However, I do want to make sure that down here in my timeline, I have everything named before I copy it. Otherwise, I'll have to go back and rename everything in my copied slides. Something else you want to do before you start copying the slide is go to focus order. This is for accessibility purposes. Make sure that it's the order that you like. Make sure that there's alternate text for any images that need it, and really do this before you copy that slide. Tip number 8, so a little bit like when we talked about just choosing 2 or 3 theme colors for your project, you're also going to want to choose probably no more than 2 or 3 fonts. And the fonts that come with Storyline are a little bit disappointing, the built-in ones. So find some cool fonts online, and actually download those, install them on your computer, and then you can open them in Storyline. Tip number 9. So this is actually my most favorite tip of all. Once you finish your project, find at least 2 people who you can sit down in front of your computer and actually watch them go through the entire project. And ideally, have the first person be a very tech-savvy person and ask them to try to break your project. So by break, I mean tell them to click everywhere, tell them to click backwards, forwards, do unexpected things, and then as you're watching, really note down any glitches that you might find. For the second person, try to find someone not so tech savvy, maybe someone who's older. I use my mom for this, sorry mom. And watch as they progress through the module if they get stuck somewhere. For example, last time I had my mom review a project, she couldn't find the X button to close a layer, and I realized I had to increase the contrast on that and actually make it a bit bigger. My final tip today is actually for the perfectionists out there. So if you suffer from perfectionism, Storyline might just be your undoing. Every time you click preview for your project, you're going to find something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be fixed, something that can be improved. It's really an endless process. And unless you have a hard deadline, like a class due date or your free trial is ending, it's really hard to come to a point where your project is finished. As such, just a little time management tip, the thing that's going to suck up most of your time, try to actually save that for the end. So for me personally, I know graphic design, I'm not a graphic designer by training. It takes me a lot of time, and I can literally spend hours trying to choose the perfect photos just for a couple of slides. So I actually make my entire project and I save things like images and photos for last, just because I do know it will suck up whatever time I give it. In conclusion, if you're new to Storyline, don't give up. Keep watching tutorials. Each time you find something new that you like, write it on a sticky note, put it next to your computer so you can remember to do that thing. And if you're someone who has more experience with Storyline, share in the comments below. Are there things that you wish you had known earlier? Anything in this video that you found helpful? And thanks for watching.